Welcome, everybody. We're going to get started in a few minutes. Appreciate you joining us today. And I'm going to let a few more people in who are in the waiting room.
Now I want to be muted.
Welcome, everybody. Anya, I just sent you a message if you could read it, please, in the chat. So we have, I think, 52 of us here. That's fantastic. So welcome to the Circuit Trails Coalition semi-annual meeting. We hold this twice a year. And we are really super excited to do this with you today. We're sorry not to be at, usually we're in Camden at the Boathouse, and that's sad that we can't be there today, but we're happy to have you all join us. And we have a wonderful program. I think we are slated to go about an hour and a half, and we will do our very best to keep us on track and on time. So again, I'm Sarah Clark Stewart. I'm chair of the Circuit Trails Coalition. And I also am executive director of the Bicycle Coalition of Greater Philadelphia. And we have participants from all over the region who are trail managers, trail developers, trail advocates, and it's super wonderful to have you here. So we will get started. First, we have Chris Lynn from Delaware Valley Regional Planning Commission, who will give us an update on the mileage of trails that have been added this year and what's coming soon. So Chris, I think we're going to hand it off to you. But you have to unmute yourself, Chris, please.
Great, thank you, Sarah. Can you hear me? Great. Good afternoon, everyone. Thanks for joining us. So, as I do at each of these meetings, we like to give an update on our progress toward achieving completion of the circuit. So since our last meeting in November, we have 4 projects that have been completed this winter that we would like to share with you. Next slide, please, Anya. So that first slide and this slide is the segment A of the Cobbs Creek Trail, which is a big highlight. We've been working on this project a long time. They're really excited to see it completed. This particular portion of the Cobbs Creek Trail extends the existing trail southward from its terminus at 70th Street to Woodland Ave at the Bluebell Inn or Bluebell Tavern. That's a distance of about a half mile. So kudos to staff at the Parks Department, Streets Department, Clean Air Council, and all their partners who work to bring this challenging trail to completion. The main obstacle, as most of you know, is what we're looking at in this slide, which is the underpass of the CSX rail bridge, which was a really tight squeeze to get this trail through. It took a lot of perseverance on the part of the project sponsors to convince everyone that this could be possible. But in the end, not only do we have a successful trail, but traffic along the Cobbs Creek Parkway is also flows considerably smoother due to a number of traffic calming measures that were installed. As for the trail itself, warning signage and pavement markings highlight this short but very tight section under the bridge that we see here. But the remainder of the trail is a paved 12-foot wide trail that meanders away from the roadway along the creek under a wooded canopy. So next slide, please. Another highlight that we saw completed is what I'm calling the Penn Treaty Park Promenade. This is a highly designed 15-foot wide section of trail along the Delaware River built by the Delaware River Waterfront Corporation. It has real high build quality here with stone pavers and built-in bench seating. In addition to this section that we see here, DRWC also completed an asphalt section that connects this area to the trail in front of the Rivers Casino. And on the other side, a portion of trail was completed that connects this promenade to Beach Street. If you go to the next slide, here you can see the section of trail that connects up to Beach Street. So this was a really successful project. DRWC and all the project engineers did a great job getting this quality project done. So eventually this project terminates just south of the Pico property, and it will extend north through that property and eventually connect with segments of trail that are currently under construction as part of the I-95 project. So next slide. So this is the full list of the 4 segments that were completed. In addition to the 2 that I showed, there is a segment of the East Coast Greenway in Bensalem Township near a development, a new housing development known as Riverside. It's about 3 miles long. It runs, it faces the development along State Road, and it's about a 0.3 mile section of trail. And we also saw the completion of the Adams Avenue connector, which is also a part of the larger I-95 reconstruction project done by PennDOT. And this is a segment of the Tacony Frankfurt Trail. So that's what we have since last November. It's only 1.5 miles. So we have not, over the last 2 years, we've had some small mileages completed, but we're hoping to complete larger sections in the future. So next slide, please. And this is just a summary of the status of the system. Just ticked upward barely by that 1.5 miles to almost 337 miles complete. About 170 miles in progress or in the pipeline. So these are projects that are anywhere from under construction to actively being worked on and moved forward by project sponsors. And 308 miles roughly remain in the planning category. And those are trails for which a lot of work needs to be done. So next slide, please. So we are still anticipating a number of significant projects coming online. Hopefully, things are a little up in the air right now with everything going on. I'm not sure what's happening on the ground right as of today, but we're still hoping to see the completion of the Grays Ferry Swing Bridge across the Schuylkill River, connecting the Grays Ferry Crescent to Bartram's Mile. The Route 29 bridge, which connects Montclair to Phoenixville along the Schuylkill River Trail, that's actively under construction but not yet complete. The Newtown Branch Rail Trail in Bucks County, so that's a larger segment, 2.5 miles. The Upper Bucks Rail Trail at 3.2 miles, and also the Delaware River Heritage Trail, what we call the Route 130 bypass at 5 miles. I have an asterisk there. I'm rather certain that most of that 5 miles is quite complete and has been so for some time, but a key element of this project was a controlled crossing of the New Jersey River line. It's a very involved element of the project. was all set up and good to go, but it has run into some additional complications. So hopefully that will be complete later this year. And if you go to the next slide, we also have a large suite of projects that we expect to start construction this calendar year. That includes the Chester Valley Trail Extension, connecting the current trail to the Schuylkill River Trail in Norristown. Another one we've been really excited about for a long time, the completion of the Schuylkill River Trail in Chester County from Hartford Ford to the 422 Bridge at almost 4 miles. A section of Chester Valley Trail extending to the west. The Bridge Street crossing in Morrisville on the D&L Canal, a short but somewhat involved project that Pennsylvania Environmental Council has been really pushing through over the last year. The Pennypack Trail extension connecting Monco's portion of the trail to Bucks County's portion of the trail. And finally, the reconstruction of the Martin Luther King Drive trail along the Schuylkill River in the city. And we hope to see that enter construction this year as well. So hopefully, as we get together 6 months from now, a year from now, we'll start to see a lot more of this mileage come online. So that's the rundown. I don't know if I missed anything. Haven't been quite as in the know the last 2 months with all the partners. Not quite as much communication what's going on, but I think we've captured most of the recent activity in the circuit system in terms of construction. So that's all I have. Thank you very much.
Chris, I think you had one more slide for
Did I have one more slide? Okay.
New Jersey.
Oh, yes. Right. There are 2 more projects under construction. These first slide was Pennsylvania. We have 2 projects in New Jersey that we expect to enter construction. That's the Rancocas Creek Greenway from Amico Island on the Delaware River, extending inland along the creek to Pennington Park, almost 2.5 miles, and the Arnie's Mount Trail, which is likewise in Burlington County, a 1.5 mile section of trail in the interior of the county. And I think that is my final slide.
Okay, great. All right, thank you very much. We're now going to turn to how the Trails community is responding to the COVID-19 pandemic. I wanted to just ask one of our co-pilots, if Commissioner Arkush has entered yet. Is she here?
Yes.
Okay.
I'm here.
Hello, Commissioner. Welcome, welcome.
Good to see you, Sarah. I like your background.
Thank you. And our other guest speaker, is she, I don't know if Maggie McCain-Johns has arrived yet, or is she coming in right at 2 o'clock?
I have not seen Maggie yet on the list.
Okay. All right. Dr. Arkush, would you like to launch right in? We would love to. We were very excited to have you. We appreciate you giving us your time. We know how busy you are. And we are honored to have you, a frontline worker and representative and elected official, join us today. So we are excited to hear about how things are going in Montgomery County and how you have been dealing with the pandemic with respect to the circuit trails in Montgomery County. So I will hand it over to you.
All right, terrific. Well, thank you, Sarah, and hello, everybody. It's great to see so many people on this meeting and have a chance to just reconnect with a bunch of people who we all share a passion for our trails and for biking and all of that. So we've had a very busy 10 weeks here in Montgomery County. We're in week 10 now. We were one of the very first counties to learn that we had individuals that had tested positive for the coronavirus. We got our first 2 cases on Saturday, March the 7th. So it's been quite a whirlwind since then. We are well over 5,100 cases at this point, and sadly, over 400 lives lost. So we are turning the corner. That's the good news. Things are getting better, but we do still have a ways to go. I want you all to know that our trail system has been a very important component of our messaging from day one. And we have urged people to get out on our trails and been very specific about how important that is for people's mental health as well as their physical health during this very stressful and uncertain time. As you probably all know, we're extremely proud of our system. We have 7 parks, 4 historic sites, and over 90 miles of recreational trails in Montgomery County. Thank you for that AV assistance. I was just going to ask about that. And generally, we have 2.4 million people who visit each year, approximately. So that's a lot for a trail system that doesn't necessarily have, one major focus or particular historic site on it. In accordance with our MACO 2040 plan, we remain committed to expanding this trail network. And of course, we have to brag that some of our trails, particularly the Schuylkill River Trail, have been noted to be among the best in the country. So in front of you is our countywide trail system map. And we've continued to promote this to our residents. Trails remain a very big part of our future vision to realize some of the goals of our comprehensive plan. And we're always trying to increase the connectivity of these trails, make them as user-friendly as possible, help highlight the fact that they even exist. Our county trail challenge has actually become very popular, and it encourages people to get out on trails that they've never visited before. So we're always looking for new and interesting ways to promote those trails. Looking toward the future, our proposed trail plan consists of 257 additional miles of trails to span the county. And we make progress toward that every year. So that's the background. What has COVID-19 done to our trails? Well, you'll like this statistic. The good side is that more people are using our trails. In fact, compared to March of 2019, we saw an increase of 65% in the number of people on our trails this March compared to last March. And I don't think I need to point out that the weather has not been great. So, the fact that we had this kind of an increase is pretty incredible, I think. There certainly seems to be much broader public awareness of our county trail system, which is great. And we hope that this is going to translate into increased and consistent use once the pandemic is over. Now, we definitely had some challenges, and the challenge has mostly come down to the fact that 65% more people are using our trails. And so there has been some overcrowding. Now, we did out of the gate make the decision to close our parks. And that quickly was a bit of a problem because nobody knew where to park. So, you kind of learn as you go. We've been building the airplane as we've been flying it. So what we did very quickly, and my planning commission has been extraordinary, they created a map for people that showed other trailheads. So for the people that only knew or were familiar with kind of the parks as a place to park, this gave them a map for other locations to park. And that actually was quite helpful. We also closed the bathrooms, any water fountains, anything like that. We shut all that off and where we have gates, put down gates to keep people out of our parks, because it's just too easy to congregate in parks. Then we put up a bunch of signs. Actually, I think they have a picture of people trying to social distance on the park. If you want to go to that next photo, I think you should have a photo in there, hopefully, of some people doing the right thing, which is maintaining social distance on our trails, wearing masks, and really trying to do things right.
Anya, can you go to the next slide?
Yeah, can you go to the next slide? You should have 4, I think, total graphics. Well, it's not critical. I'll keep going. Not a problem. So we have continued to employ our park rangers throughout this period, and they have been doing, I'm not going to call it enforcement, but certainly trying to provide guidance to people to behave appropriately. So first we closed all those trails. While we kept our park rangers employed, we put them on kind of a rotating schedule. So the goal being that not an entire workforce is out and exposed at any one time. That's just something we've been doing throughout the county to keep our workforce safe. Sorry, it's allergies. Don't worry, not COVID. And then we also added public health signage to all of our trails. There we go. So those are people trying to do it right. And then if you're able to go to the next one, there we go. So now we have these signs all over our trails. So we are trying to remind people that we're taking this seriously and encourage people to do the right thing. The next thing that happened was I threatened to close the trails. And sadly, it came to that. But we were getting so many messages from people that the trails were unsafe that during, I do give a daily press briefing, so I had a nice platform to do this. I was very clear about the case, or the fact that if this, in the upcoming weekend, whenever that was, if people didn't behave more responsibly, that I was going to close the trails. And I have to tell you, that seemed to work. And ever since then, while we do get some complaints, they went down dramatically. And I actually did a 20-mile ride on the Schuylkill River Trail, not this past weekend, but that Saturday a week ago when the weather was so beautiful. And I was really, really encouraged by what I saw. Most people had masks on. They didn't necessarily have them up, but as they approached other people that they were passing, they would pull them up, and then they would pull them back down once they got past them. So we were really pleased to see that, and so far so good, I think. We've been weighing the health and mental health benefits of keeping these trails open versus the public health risk of keeping them open, practically on a weekly basis, and have decided that it's really something that we need to keep open. We have decided, though, that for now we are not going to reopen our parks. We actually spent an hour considering that on the phone the other day with a lot of guidance and sort of fact-checking from our staff. We decided that we're just not quite ready to do that yet, given the amount of disease that remains prevalent in our community. So another really important thing that we did was our planning commission. This was something they had been working on, but we made public something called low stress streets. And you can find that by going to www.montcopa.org/get-out-and-go-streets. So montcopa.org/get-out-and-go-streets. And this is what the landing page looks like. And you can type in your address, and it will pinpoint your neighborhood, and it will show you public, regular streets. And they're either green, yellow, or red. So green streets are streets that pedestrians and your average bicyclists should feel comfortable on. Yellow streets are streets that an experienced cyclist should feel comfortable on. And then the red streets are typically streets that nobody should be on, no matter what your level of experience. That seems to have been very, very helpful. And the reason I know it's been helpful is because now we're getting emails from people who live in what they consider to be private communities. Even though they don't have a gate, they consider them to be private. And they are complaining that other people are now using their streets. So I know people are using this map because many of those streets are very safe streets because they're relatively low traffic. So it's just a little window into my job. No good deed goes unpunished, but we always balance the larger picture, and we try to do what's right for the most people, particularly in the middle of a pandemic where opportunities to get out and exercise are so important. So that's just a little window into what's going on here in Monaco. We continue to make plans to build out our system because the solution to creating a lower concentration of people is to have more places and trails to go. We are very grateful. PennDOT is going to be adding, let me get the number right here, 8.3 miles of bike lanes throughout the county during 2020 as part of their road resurfacing efforts. So we're very, very thrilled about that. And as you know, there's certain trails that are literally under construction right now, like the Penny Pack. The Penny Pack should connect, will connect, I hope still, up to Bucks County line and then connect into Bucks. So that's going to be done this year. And a number of other things are in process. So I'll stop there and hope that gives you a little bit of insight into what's going on here in Monaco. And I'm happy to take any questions.
Great. Thank you so much, Commissioner. Can you give the URL of that low stress street page again? I will put it in the chat.
Yes. Yes, it's www.montcopa, montcopa.org.
Okay.
/get out and go streets. All one word. Streets
Okay.
with an S.
Okay.
Get out and go streets. Yeah, get
Wonderful.
out and go streets. Yeah.
Great.
It's pretty neat. People should play with it. It's pretty awesome. Works
That's
great.
That's wonderful. Thank you. So everyone, you should have the ability to raise your hand if you have a question for the commissioner, and we have 5 minutes to take questions. And I think Sean can see who's asking a question. Is that
Yeah,
right?
so if people open their participant screen, which is one of the options down on the bottom of the screen, at the bottom of that screen for you, you should have a raise hand icon. If you do that, I'll see that on my screen and I can unmute you and you can ask your question.
Do we have a question yet?
I am scanning through. I don't see any questions yet.
Well, I'll just start things off, Commissioner. If you, I just want to say I really admired how you handled everything so far. It's just been amazing. We've listened to you on the radio a tremendous number of times. If there was anything you would have done differently since the beginning that you think relate to trails, what would you have done?
That's a really good question. You know, I've actually been pretty happy about it. You know, I think if we ever find ourselves in this situation again, which I dearly hope that we don't, I think we'll just be much better prepared about how to message the availability of our trails during a pandemic and the importance of sending out sort of the right message to the public about that, you know, they can use these trails, but they have to do it responsibly and things like that. You know, we would now know how important it is to really close off parking lots and make sure that people have all the information that they need about where to park, where to go, alternative sites, things like that. But, you know, overall, we've been pretty happy with how this has gone. It's gone remarkably smoothly, especially after I threatened to close the trails. There was a marked uptick in good behavior.
I have a question from Patrick Starr, and then I have a question from Leonard. Patrick, I'm unmuting you now. I think. Come on.
It still says I'm muted.
There you go.
Can you hear me?
Hi, Patrick.
Hi, Commissioner. Thank you for joining us today. And I agree with your experience of the Schuylkill River Trail was similar to mine. So again, thank you for that. I saw lots of people with masks and lots of people trying very hard. The COVID swerve, as I call it, where you go,
Right.
go far as you can around someone that you pass or see on the trail. I was curious though, I know it was not an easy decision. Well, I suspect it was not an easy decision to close parks given your own personal inclinations. I'm curious, what were the factors that went into that decision to close parks? I'm thinking it would be difficult to maintain restrooms and things like that, but could you talk about that a little bit for somebody who's just not as familiar with managing a system like you are?
Yeah. And actually, you know what, Patrick, I'm going to just pick up on your COVID swerve. There is one piece of advice that I would give to the cyclist community, which is I use lights. You know, I'm a doctor and I've taken care of too many people that interacted with an automobile in the emergency room. So I have a blinking light on the front and back of my bike. What I really noticed when I was riding a week ago was that the people who have lights, obviously people see you coming from further away, they notice you, and it lets people mentally figure out how they're going to distance with a little more time. So I know a lot of people don't use lights routinely, but that would be one thing I would, perhaps you could just message out. It just makes it easier to plan for that COVID swerve if people can see you from a distance. So that's just one thought I had when I was out biking. So when it comes to the trails, the bathrooms and the drinking fountains are obvious ones because obviously the guidance around prevention of COVID-19 revolves a lot around cleaning surfaces that can harbor the virus. We know this virus persists on metal and plastic, potentially for days. So if you start talking about restroom use and things like that, it quickly gets very complicated. But the thing that we were worried the most about, most, if not all of our parks have pavilions that people would naturally congregate under, as well as picnic tables. So we could have removed the picnic tables, but you know, we were worried that people would still throw out blankets and perhaps congregate with people that were beyond their household contacts. Same thing with our pavilions. You know, if an unexpected thunderstorm broke out, we had these visions of people running under the pavilion. And even if we roped them off, we just felt like it was too much of almost like a attractive nuisance at this moment. So, you know, hopefully once we're in more of the yellow phase, once we're in it, we're not in it at all right now, and groups of up to 25 can be together under the governor's plan, we will probably start to reopen cautiously. But until we're at that phase, we felt that it would be sending the wrong message, frankly, that if no more than 10 people are supposed to be together and here's this beautiful big open park, that it would just be irresistible.
Thank you, Commissioner. So we have time for one more question, I think, from Leonard, and then we will move to our next speaker.
Go ahead, Leonard.
Hello, Commissioner. Thank you so much for your great leadership on trails. I say it a lot. If we had 8 Montgomery counties in the region, I'd be out of a job at the Bicycle Coalition. What you said about the low stress streets is something really close to my heart. It's a lot of the analysis work that I've done here over the years with interns and so forth. And so, given that you're seeing a lot of success as measured by the complaint phone calls, do you have any plans on expanding that network, or you know, besides what's already happening with the repaving plan and adding bike lanes, and making some of these other streets that are key connectors between some of these low stress islands and getting them calmed down as well?
Yeah, absolutely. So for any of you that are familiar with our bike Motco plan, and I'm sorry I don't have that URL at my fingertips, but Sarah could probably come up with it.
Yep. I'll find it.
Yeah, our bike Motco plan was a survey of the whole county with the goal of doing exactly what Leonard just mentioned, that as we redo or rebuild streets, that we have always at our fingertips those streets that would be great candidates to make a little bit wider or institute traffic calming on, or, you know, put in a better crosswalk when it's being rebuilt, you know, those types of things. And in addition to that, a year ago now, maybe it's been longer, we passed what's called a complete streets policy, as well as a health in all policies approach. So those are two different things. Health in all policies means that every time we institute a new policy, we think about the health impacts of that policy, both pro and con. And that dovetails nicely with the complete streets policy, which serves to codify in policy in our county at any time a street is being redone, that one of the factors that will be taken into consideration in planning is, even if it's not immediate trail use, future trail use, or just the ability to redo that street in a way that would make it more pedestrian, jogger, cyclist friendly. So that is baked into our planning now and how we approach those policies. And, those things take time because streets are only redone, over every so many years, but hopefully this will be a lasting legacy. And over the next decade or so, it will really transform a number of our streets to make them much more user-friendly.
Great. Well, thank you so much, Commissioner. We truly appreciate your willingness to come and spend time with us and share with us your experience and what you've been doing. We very much appreciate all that you do to help make the circuit trails in Montgomery County as robust and successful as possible. So thank you again.
Thank you. Thanks to all of you, and stay safe.
Great. So I don't know if our next speaker is here, Sean, Maggie. Oh, great. Wonderful. So we can go to Maggie to hear from her. And I think her slides are right up next.
Actually, I have no slides.
Oh, we have no slides. Okay, no problem. Well,
hopefully you guys have a nice slide for everyone.
Well, why don't we, let me see. I am going to unshare the screen. And so that we can see everyone. There you are.
Hi.
Great. Well, the floor is yours, Maggie, to give us an update on your experience with the pandemic and the circuit trails in Camden County.
Great. Thanks, Sarah. And hi, everybody. Maggie McCann-Johns, the Director of the Parks Department for Camden County. So, a little bit of a different experience, I think, than Pennsylvania, just because we are, right now our trails are open, but we did have a time when the governor closed our parks and closed our trails. And so we had, it was probably a few weeks from April 7th to May 2nd. Thank you, Jack. Jack Swarsky is sitting next to me, who many of you probably know. And
at a safe distance.
Yes, of course. And I think that was a little bit difficult for a number of reasons. One of them being the fact that a lot of our circuit trails serve as the sidewalk in many communities. And so there really wasn't a way for us to technically enforce that closure. And so we have a trail right outside the window that we're sitting at, and a circuit trail. We didn't stop people from walking on it. We kept people off of our more of our nature trails and the trails, our unpaved trails that are in our parks, and made sure that people knew that they were closed. But really, what we did was just try and make sure that people were keeping safe social distancing. And so with the help of our park ambassadors, we made sure that, if we saw any groups congregating, that we engaged them and let them know that that was not okay. As well as anybody practicing any unsafe social distancing or not practicing social distancing, that we let them know that that was not okay. Even when our parks did open, obviously, really the one thing that people can do is be on the trails. Definitely during the earlier part of the season, when many other things closed to people, we saw a definite uptick in use of the trails. I would say I've never seen that many people outside of our building or on the circuit trail at Cooper River. And so it's been very kind of heartwarming to see people getting outside and using the trails. I mean, even if it's because it's the only thing that they can do right now. We've certainly seen an increase in usage And I'm sure that as the weather warms and whatever that happens, I guess by this Friday, that we'll be seeing even more people using the trails, certainly. So, you know, some of the things that we have done is, especially at Cooper River Park, we've limited parking. The governor's executive order wanted capacity reduced by 50%. And so we closed many of our parking areas so that making it clear to people that while you're welcome in the park, that we really want to make sure that we're not admitting as many people as we usually are. And also obviously keeping the areas along the trails, like our playgrounds and our picnic areas, closed as well. And you know, in certain respects, we've done that with maybe some caution tape, but similar to Pennsylvania, you know, we didn't remove picnic tables or anything like that. We're just trying to keep an eye on the parks and make sure that people aren't gathering in them the way that they might normally do. We're not issuing park permits, things of that nature.
Okay.
But I'm happy to take any questions that anybody might have. Yeah, thank you.
Sure. So if anyone has a question for Maggie, please hit the raise your hand option when you go to participants. Maybe I'll ask the same question, Maggie, that I asked the Commissioner Arkush, which is basically kind of a lesson learned. Now that you know you've been through this, you know, arduous, stressful 10 weeks, what have you learned that you think, okay, next time this happens, we'll do this differently?
I'm not planning for next time now. Yeah, I mean, I think, you know, one of the things that this has helped is just us think about that planning and being able to be ready for a response. Also, you know, one of the things that we did, I just talked about on the phone with the freeholder, is that our county commissioner, is that, you know, we really need to tweak our signage. You know, some of the information on there about the recommendation to wear a mask when possible, and staying 6 feet apart. Our outreach department made tiny signs, and so we want to get bigger signs that are visible to people. And I think just you know, having ideas. You know, I've been talking with Jack, and this is something that still might happen. We're talking about it on the South Park side of Cooper River, is possibly opening the road to as seen behind Sarah, to people as opposed to vehicular traffic. And I think that that's a good solution. You know, it's a little bit difficult for some of our parks just because they run through so many municipalities and we don't have our own park police. And so if municipalities are willing to help us with those costs and with that coordination, it's something that we're able to do. And so that's something that likely will be coming online, especially as the weather warms. And we are looking to do that. And I think that that's a good solution, especially in places where, you know, it's kind of impossible to have that 6 feet distance when you have that many people in the park.
Is there anyone having a question, Sean?
I have one question from John Boyle. I'll go ahead and unmute him.
Hi, John.
Hi, Maggie. How are you? So I'm really happy that you guys are considering making some temporary changes to South Park Drive. I was wondering on the North Park Drive side if consideration was given to maybe shifting the parking from the riverside, encouraging people to park on the north side to sort of widen up that bike lane to give people more room, because I know that path is very narrow.
Yes.
Just, I was thinking if it was even thought about as a possibility.
I don't think we've had particular discussions about that, but I'm happy to look at that with both on that side it's Pennsauken and Cherry Hill PDs, and see where the appetite might be to do that. I think that might be a good solution in terms of it does get quite tight in some of those areas. And while it's great that we put those bike lane sections in, you know, it just gets really narrow in some places and not conducive to many people riding. So I'm happy to look at that. Thanks, John.
I have another question from Patrick Starr, so I'm going to unmute him.
Hi, Patrick.
Hello, how are you?
Well, thank you.
Good. I was curious whether you've gotten the same sort of community reaction. It sounded like that Commissioner Arkush had experience, and I was curious too whether you see the recent experience impacting, say, the county's investment or interest in trails moving forward. What impact might you imagine given the experience?
Yeah, you know, Jack and I have definitely had some conversations about this. I mean, I think that especially when, you know, all businesses and social distancing really came into play for social, you know, outings and things of that nature, where people were immediately out on the trails, no matter what the weather was really, and clearly showing that they were invested and they cared about the trails. You know, Jack said, well, this can only be a good thing for us and our work and what we're doing. And so I definitely, you know, I think that our freeholders have made it obvious that they're very invested in our trail work by, you know, them putting in the some odd $4 million last year for the design of the Camden County Link Trail. And I think that it's only going to continue to build on that, especially as we see so many people using the trails. So definitely Jack and I saw that as a boon to what the work that we're doing. You know, we've been in conversation too with our congressman's office and with our senators' offices about if there's any potential, you know, infrastructure stimulus funding coming down that we can utilize to get this trail built sooner rather than later. And so I'm hopeful that what's happened is going to just kind of continue to spur the work that we've already started and continue to build on that momentum.
Great. Any other questions, Sean?
I don't see any other raised hands at the moment.
Maggie, I had a question. Just a logistical one. Is there a trail counter on Cooper River Trail that I'm just wondering if you have a documented increase?
Jack is nodding his head yes at me, so yes.
I'm nodding my head yes. There is a counter. Sean may be able to answer that. To be honest, I have not looked. I would assume it increased year over year.
Yeah.
But there is one on South Park Drive.
I guess, you know, given the you know, the excitement that people have for coming out to the trails, I mean, from your perspective, what could we do as advocates help you, you know, make that case for continued investment, more investment? You know, I know your freeholders support trails in the circuit trail system, but is there anything we can do to help even leverage this, you know, terrible crisis, but to help, you know, really make the point to all of our elected officials that this investment is truly valuable and worthy? What do you think the advocacy community and the trail support community could do?
Get Conrail to agree to let us build on their land. I think, you know, we have a situation where the Link Trail goes through 17 towns and all 17 mayors are on board. It goes through a lot of public lands, so that's not an issue. The biggest hurdle we're having is getting through Conrail. You know, Maggie mentioned we're looking at potential stimulus funds. That would be for everything but the Conrail section because we're still waiting for them to come on board with us. We're hoping that if we can get both ends built, that'll increase the pressure. If they haven't already agreed to it, that might push them to agree to extend the trail or fill the trail in the middle section. But we have the support of the freeholders, we have support of mayors, and any of the outreach we've done, the local community, with very few exceptions, is supportive, and they're more or less saying, this is great, when's it going to be done? Will it be done next year? Will it be done sooner rather than later? So we're pretty good in that sense, but Conrail is going to be our biggest hurdle.
Okay. Andy Hamilton was asking, is it Conrail, CSX, or Norfolk Southern? And I guess it is Conrail from what you've said.
Yes, it's Conrail.
Okay, great.
Yeah. And apparently they have had a turnover recently, so some of the momentum that we had, I don't want to say is stopped, but is paused. So we're waiting for all the dust to settle with them before starting back up conversations with them.
Right. Okay. Well, any other questions from folks? If hearing none, thank you, Maggie and Jack, so much for your time. We know you're very busy. We appreciate the update and getting your perspective on what's working and what we can do. So thank you very, very much for your time.
You're welcome. Thank you. Thanks, Sarah.
Okay, great. So everyone, we have a few minutes to do a poll. And so I think I'm going to hand it over to Sean to put up the poll so that all of you can just simply with your keyboard answer about 5 questions.
All right, just put it up. You should have a dialog box on your screen. You can click your answer. Let things run for a little bit, and then we'll give you the results. About 5 more seconds. All right, I'm going to end the poll. Here are the results. So overwhelmingly, people are hearing expressions of appreciation about trails from users. 97% to 3%. I'll go to the next one, Sarah.
Okay.
So here's the next question. Are you seeing concerning levels of crowding on your trail? Yes or no? About 5 more seconds. All right. Here are the results of that question. So along with that appreciation, it is coming some crowding, not as much of a majority this time, but still 70% folks saying they're seeing concerning levels of crowding on their trail. I'll go to the next question. This question is your municipality/county opening streets or considering opening streets to supplement space on trails and in parks? Have a yes, no, and not sure answers for this one. About 5 more seconds. All right, here are the results of this one. Slightly over 50% people saying no, the municipality or county is not opening streets or considering opening streets. All right, 2 more questions for you. Here's one about social distancing. Question, do most of your trail users seem to obey social distancing guidelines? About 5 more seconds, get your answers in. All right, here are the results of this one. So 74% people saying that trail users seem to be obeying social distancing guidelines. So even though it's crowded, people seem to be trying. last question. Are you seeing any maintenance issues on your trail due to increased usage? Yes, no, and have not seen increased use answers.
Just want to say, watching the poll in progress is pretty fun.
So two more seconds. And here are the results here. 66% saying no increased maintenance usage, or no maintenance issues due to increased usage. About 30% saying yes. So those results, though they're anonymous, will get recorded with the whole meeting. So we'll be able to share those results out to folks that want a record of that.
Great. So real quickly, while we're here, I'm going to put us on gallery view, and I'd love to take a picture of everyone. So could you snap a little screenshot? So can you try to put your best Zoom face on? Great.
Everybody's unmuting their video, so.
All right, I got the first screen. We have 4 sets of people, so I'm going to take 4 pictures.
There's 76 people signed in.
That's so wonderful. Great. All right, here I'm on the 3rd one, so smile, and then I'm almost done. Okay, then this group is largely not showing themselves. Oh, and I've got the back of a cat. Great. Okay. Anya, why don't we go to sharing screen again, and we'll continue with the program. I'm going to give an update on our strategic plan. If for those of you who are new here today, and just as a reminder, we have a strategic plan that's that we adopted last year. It's a 3-year plan and essentially is 6 goals. We have met at least twice, I think, about this plan as a large group, and have chairs of committees that work on these goals. And so what I'm going to do is go through each one and report out on what the progress has been made over the past 6 months since we last met. So next slide. So the first goal is moving the circuit forward to reach 500 miles by 2025. As Chris Lynn said in the beginning of the presentation, we have about 336 miles built out of a 800 plus system. And in order to keep the region on track, we need to try and accelerate trail development so that we can meet the goal of building out this trail by 2040. So here we are in 2020. We started about 8 years ago working on this. And so we have set for ourselves a goal, an ambitious goal of trying to reach 500 miles by 2025. We did, as a group, as the Circuit Trails Coalition, an analysis last year with an assessment of how could we make it to 2025 if we have about 160 or so miles left to build to reach that number of 500 miles. We looked at carefully the array of trail segments that are in some kind of development and in the category of either in progress, meaning they're funded and close to construction or under construction, or are they in pipeline, meaning they've had some kind of feasibility study. And there is enough miles. We put out that report, moving the circuit forward. We presented it to the Regional Technical Committee and the entire DVRPC board in November and in January. And we were beginning to make some great progress on having some sort of high-level discussions with the DVRPC board before the pandemic hit us in March. But meanwhile, what we have done is we want to create action teams for each of the 9 counties that would focus on a trail segment that really needs help, that is in a pipeline kind of status, or is in progress status, but is somewhat stuck. And so we have here a spreadsheet of each of the 9 counties, the team leader, and you can see that for Philadelphia, we have Daniel, Pascal, and Lizzie Hessick. I won't read all the names, but we have a team leader for each county. We have a priority trail that we have selected, and this was through a vetting process that many members of the steering committee were part of. So you can see the trail name, the trail segment detail, its status, and then how long it is. And we tried to look for trail segments that, as I said, were needed some championing but were feasible, that we thought could really be achieved in the next 4.5 years. And so we are now in the process of, we've met twice with all the team leaders, and we are starting the process of developing campaign plans to help figure out how to sort of find the path forward for each of these particular trail segments. We know that when we started, we had sort of a certain idea that we were going to proceed in a certain way. And with the pandemic, we have to shift. We have to be careful and be nimble with our messaging about and recognize that we are in a different environment. There may be less money available. There may be different kinds of obstacles that we have to overcome. But we still think it's really important to try to keep moving forward with this kind of county level advocacy to keep this issue alive and to keep the momentum going. And so we hope that over May and probably in parts of June, we will have prepared kind of a campaign plan for each county, and then we will be working closely with the marketing effort that Brandy's going to talk about in a little bit, to make sure that our campaign works well with that effort, and also which is going to help us bring people to the teams, people who are interested in getting involved. So this is the way that we are saying to trail users, if you want to get involved, come and join one of these action teams and become a trail advocate, become a circuit citizen. So that's it for goal number 1. Let's go to the next slide for goal number 2. This is to promote diversity, equity, and inclusion within the Circuit Trails Coalition. Last year, Julia Raskin wrote the Inclusionary Trail Planning Toolkit for Pennsylvania Environmental Council as a guiding document, and for all of us who are members of the Circuit Trails Coalition, as a reference to help us all create inclusive outreach and engagement. This was followed by a series of workshops that everyone was invited to and many attended. The conclusion was that there should be a task force formed to help promote justice, equity, and diversity and inclusion. And a task force was created that's called JEDI, to stand for JEDI. And it's been meeting every other month since October and comprises about 10 to 12 people. And their vision is that the Circuit Trails Coalition and users of the Circuit Trails are representative of the communities through which trails pass or are planned. The goal of the task force is to support the coalition members in promoting planning processes and programs to build inclusive trails within their communities. The task force has 3 subcommittees, and they each are meant to build off of the best practices that are documented in the Inclusionary Trail Planning Toolkit. New resources, communications, and research and data. And so those three subcommittees are working to further develop those aspects that would help the Circuit Trails Coalition members promote diversity, inclusion, and equity in their trail planning. So we will be hearing more from the task force at the next meeting about some of the results of what those subcommittees have done. So the next, and if you are at all interested in getting involved, Julia would love to hear from you. Her email address is julia.raskin, R-A-S-K-I-N, at newjerseyconservation.org. And we will put these notes in the follow-up materials that get sent out to you. The third goal is to advocate for diverse and stable trail funding. This, I believe, is this goal is being led by both Sonia and Patrick, in both New Jersey and Pennsylvania. So the first thing that the effort was made to prevent any rescissions within from the Federal Transportation Reauthorization. And that was successful. Congress did not allow any rescissions to occur. There was an effort to partner with other trails in the state to push for dedicated funding sources. There was work done with DVRPC on their update to the Funding Trails in New Jersey guide. There was an effort led by Sonia to make sure that trails were discussed at the New Jersey Strategic Highway Safety meetings and finding ways for the state to use HSIP in its funding for trails. And there's an effort to convene groups to come together in Trenton for a summit. This will be pursued over the next 6 months. The fifth goal, I'm going to jump over number 4. The fifth goal was to create a strategy for working with regional and national railroads. If we can go to the next slide, please, Anya. This was a project that, sorry, is it stuck? Okay. Liz Sewell of Rails to Trails presented her best practices at various conferences and meetings. Liz unfortunately left us and went to California, but she did a lot of work on this topic. There's a summary of best practices on the circuit website's resources section under trail planning. And the document is called Railroad Property Acquisition Do's and Don'ts. So if that's of interest to you, please go look for that. I'm not going to read all the do's and don'ts because there's about a dozen of them, but she has distilled everything down to some very good guidance on how to approach and how to not approach a railroad when pursuing acquisition. So goal number 6 is to provide guidance on issues that serve as roadblocks to trail development. Here we go. There are the do's and don'ts. So the Circuit Coalition members were polled by Anya. She's the one taking the lead on this. And the number one issue that was reported as being a problem was, and preventing trail development, is the negative perception around crime and safety. So Anya has developed a webinar to arm anyone who watches it with the data and information that you might need to dispel any myths and ensure that the design and operation of your trail discourages crime and creates feelings of safety. So thank you very much for doing that. It's on June 4th at 11 a.m. So please sign up for that. Featured at the webinar will be Paul Gordon of Bucks County, a senior transportation planner, Britt Stork of Alta Planning, and Michael Sritzka, lead ranger for Chester County Parks and Open Space. So that's a terrific sort of example of hearing what the issues are and responding with resources. So I'm now going to hand over the baton to Brandy Horton, who is going to lead us through a presentation on how the Circuit Trails Coalition will be promoting circuit trails through communications and marketing in this trail season. So thank you, Brandy.
All right, can you see me and can you hear me okay?
Yes.
All right. And thank you, Anya, for pulling that slide up. As Sarah noted in the outset of reviewing the strategic goals, obviously much has changed since we initially planned for what the trail season marketing campaign would look like, and kind of presented that to the steering committee and had a great baked plan back in February. So we've spent the past few months and weeks really evaluating a few things, kind of where the messaging in the market is. In the very beginning, clear of what trails would stay open, what that would look like, and obviously even in the presentations from Dr. Arkush and from Camden County, just hearing about how much trails have been a place for people to be active and to solace in this moment. Communities are really relying on their trails and they're staying open. And so that was kind of question number one as we figured out where to go. Because originally our trail season campaign was meant to kick off in April, April 18th for opening day for trails. We postponed all of our paid media and we kind of shifted that so that we would have a better handle on where the situation would be before we put paid media out into the world. Because a paid, we can switch social media fast, we can switch anything that's digital really fast. Some of the paid media we've got out there is kind of a buy for the season. And we didn't want to put messaging out in April that we just weren't sure kind of what would be appropriate to do. So we shifted that investment so that it would be responsive to what's going on, and we delayed the campaign to begin in early June. And what that's done is given us a better understanding of the status around trails in the region, kind of the needs, all these situations surrounding, how do we encourage people to use trails safely in this moment. So as of right now, what it's looking like is the campaign will really focus on the following channels. We'll be doing a bit more digital advertising this year, in part because it gives us the ability to change our messaging quickly if we need to. And whatever that looks like, we can be really responsive to the moment. We will still be doing something that's been really successful the past few years has been the targeted email with Visit Philly. That will still happen. It will happen later in June. It gives us quite a few very specific prompts that we can target people to around, some of the advocacy efforts that are underway, around the share the trail messaging and the trail etiquette messaging, and the idea and the notion of finding trails still close to home, because I think that is still kind of the number one and most predominant guidance around, using trails. We should still be using those trails that are walkable, bikeable, in large part from our homes, the best that we can. We will be doing investment in outdoor advertising, and that might seem a little counterintuitive because, hey, transit isn't quite running the way it was, or people aren't using it the way it was. What's nice about outdoor advertising is that we get a mix of bus shelters, different digital billboards, and then the bus tails that even if you're not on the buses, you see them. And that really was the most important investment in terms of broader geographic reach for us. And so we will be maintaining that. And what you see up on the screen right now, we were donated because the whole situation has changed so much in terms of advertising across the board. Intersection, which is the agency that helps us purchase the outdoor advertising, donated to us a series of what's called urban panels, which are kind of larger digital displays that were on unused territory for them. And so we got a free run for about 4 weeks. And what we did was we put out this messaging about sharing the trail safely, because it started in about 2 weeks ago, at maybe 3 now at this point. And it was really at the height of, trails. We were watching the weather improve, trail use already high, even with maybe not so great weather, and really wanting to make sure that people were being safe out there so that trails could stay open in particular. So that is all underway. And then the other thing I just wanted to share, and Anya, if you can go to the next slide, is that last year, so Visit Philly is a system we've used, a channel we've used for the past few years. It was raised, hey, could we do this through New Jersey as well? And Visit New Jersey also has some advertising options. It primarily through their guidebook. So we had bought an ad in the New Jersey guidebook that ran for this 2020 season. So it's in. It's up there, a little not quite the same messaging, but the guidebook is out there, and that is there. So I just wanted to raise that for folks in case you saw it out and about. Paid media also will continue to be complemented by strategic messaging and outreach and earned and shared media, as well as web content that reinforces the messaging that we're putting out around safe trail use, but also kind of advocacy and how people can support and continue to grow trails. And then the idea of, really sending thanks and gratitude for trails. So moving into the campaign this summer, we're going to really emphasize a balance of that content. And because we've got some really nimble channels and then some more kind of static paid channels like the outdoor advertising, we'll have a balance of really that kind of public service around be safe, keep a social distance, what like it looks like. And Anya, I think that's the next slide if you go one more. Yes, so we put up a post on the circuit website so that we could quickly have some content up there. We can continue to evaluate that and edit that, but if you go to circuittrails.org/share the trail, it goes to this blog post, again, about 3 weeks ago. We'll probably update that. Right now. It still reflects the stay-at-home orders, which are obviously shifting as we speak. And so we want to make sure people know that as stay-at-home orders change, we move into the new phases of what reentry looks like, that this message is still really, really important. We'll be balancing that with a gratitude campaign. So this is one of the ideas that has been circulated among the action teams and the steering committee as a way to really take our trail user base and start to cultivate that more advocacy kind of thought process. And so as you guys put it up in the poll, so many people have just been naturally sharing their gratitude for trails. There's a few campaigns happening already in Pennsylvania. RTC ran one nationally a few weeks ago for Celebrate Trails that happened in place of opening day for trails, just to spread public thanks about how important trails are in this time. And then we're going to start to encourage people to send letters, positive notes, positive letters to their local officials, thanking them for the trails that they already have, as a way to continue to cultivate and build those relationships as we move into appropriate advocacy around the action teams in the coming weeks and months. And then we will be, again, as appropriate, just amplifying the messages around the 500 Miles by 2025 campaign. We do have some cultivation funnel set up on the website, so people can sign up to be an advocate. They can kind of raise their hand right away and say that they're interested in supporting advocacy. Those people will funnel directly and pretty much immediately into the action teams. And then we have some opportunities as well as people come in just kind of more generally interested in the circuit, to then push them over to advocacy if that's something that they want to do. And then trying to use the gratitude campaign and some other more softer touch points, things that we normally would have probably done in events and more kind of direct engagement virtually, to kind of continue to bring people through the process, really educate them about what the circuit is, why it requires that kind of advocacy and support, and really starting to build them into those local campaigns as they move through that ladder of engagement. And then, kind of as summer moves forward, the thing I just want to kind of close with is that we'll continue to evaluate what is appropriate. It does look like, every state is different, and it does look like, at least in Pennsylvania, as more cities move from red to yellow, we'll be moving from fewer than 10 or no gatherings to up to 25 gatherings. There may be some situations where people start to do rides and events and things of that nature. And depending on what the climate is, we'll build that stuff into promotion. So if you can move to the last slide, Anya, the action plan. I do still hope that people will continue to share events, virtual events with Anya, so that we can continue to build those into our messaging. Build in share with us any content around, safe social distancing, good trail etiquette, being a good trail citizen, trail stewardship, anything like that, because we want to continue to reinforce that this isn't just the circuit saying that it's important to do all these things, but that all of our local trail partners and our agency partners across the region are also reinforcing the same thing. There is still swag, and there is still opportunities to incentivize participation. So if you are running a virtual event, or you're having a small ride and you want resources, reach out to us and we'll figure out ways to kind of connect you with those things. For RTC, we've been gathering people who have won prizes for our stuff, and we'll be sending stuff out when our stay-at-home orders are lifted. And as the summer goes on, those things will continue to change and evolve. So just continue to be in touch with us. If you see things that are really great models for messaging, please share it. If you have resources you want us to push out, please send it our way, and we will do that. We've tried to continue to pay attention to those things. So that's just kind of it in a nutshell, and we'll stay in touch as the season goes on.
Great. Well, thank you, Brandy. We do have time for questions for either myself or Brandy about the strategic plan and the 6 goals.
Looks like Christine has a question or maybe a comment.
Hi, everyone. Hi, Brandy. I just wanted to add to all that Brandy shared that if you are hearing of or know of just interesting stories of, resilient, safe use, the way people are sort of coping by being on the trail, that would make for maybe an interesting feature story and something that we might be able to share with local reporters to add that to this action plan too, in terms of just things to share either directly with us or with Anya, and we'll coordinate that outreach back to you. But we're just looking for just sort of interesting human interest stories that we might be able to share with local reporters at this time.
Great. Any other questions or thoughts that people might have? There are 70, some of us, I'm sure. So please don't be shy. Well, I have I guess a sort of thought, Sean and Chris. I think there are 15 trail counters around the entire region. Is that right? Or are there more than that now?
There are 16 that we operate and an additional one that the DNL National Heritage Corridor operates.
And have you looked at, I think you're having some kind of seminar soon about counts. Have you looked at sort of, I'm just thinking like broadly, is there a story in the increase in usage all across the circuit that maybe needs to be told?
So I'll start answering, and Chris can certainly jump in. We've put out a couple of short articles that are on the DVRPC newsroom that sort of summarize counts for March and April and compare them to the same period last year. I'm going to be presenting to our public participation task force tonight about the same thing. And we also have we have some data summaries posted on our COVID-19 resources for local municipalities. So yes, we are trying to get that message out there, in addition to sharing the data as we have it with all of our planning partners, both public and nonprofit. So yes, there are stories to be told, and we're getting them out there. Sharing them nationally too. APBP has requested materials and we've provided some to them as well.
Sean, I would add that part of the story is that, counts are definitely up across the board for all of our counters. Certainly this past April was not the greatest weather month, and probably if we weren't experiencing the pandemic, every counter probably would have gone down over 2019, but instead we saw every counter go up, and usually by quite a bit. Another interesting observation that Sean first made is the one exception to that has been Schuylkill Banks, our most active and busy and crowded trail. And we saw much less of an increase or a bump in activity on that trail, maybe because, people don't feel that they really can effectively social distance on such a crowded and busy trail that has, 200,000 uses, a month sometimes.
I just have two quick question and a comment. Chris and Sean, is there any way to kind of present the numbers of use to explain to especially media that this would have actually probably been a downtime? except for what's going on. Because sometimes I think we see the rise, the 171% in that first couple weeks after was just extreme. But some of the increases, like Montgomery County, 65% up, that we know is exceptional. It's not always understood outside of our circle what a big deal that is. And I just don't know if there's any way to run that analysis so that you can really demonstrate what we could have projected with the weather being what it was and what it ended up being.
Yeah, it's a hard point to well, it's an easy point to communicate, but it's a hard point to really like tease out exactly quantitatively in the data, because we can't rerun April without the pandemic and compare, which would be the best way to do it. But we see time and time again, when you compare month over month and you have a month where it's rainy and colder on the weekends, trail use is always down. It's like an ironclad rule. And we see that after looking at trail data year after year after year. March was way up. March in general weather was better in 2020 than 2019. So part of the increase was due to better weather, but a lot of the increase was due to different use of the trails in these new conditions that are very unlike normal times. But we have data that we can kind of normalize the impacts of weather. So there are some ways to tease it out, but I can't, off the top of my head, think of a very clear, easy way to describe that. But the weather signal is very clear and consistent when you look across a lot of data points.
That makes a lot of sense. And I just wanted to draw attention as well to the comment that Andy Johnson put in the chat about anecdotes around people using circuit trails to commute, especially in communities where there's low car ownership or a high level of reliance on transit. And one of the things that RTC is currently gathering is some data about behavior change. So we've surveyed our members. Maybe it's something we can push out more regionally to kind of build a bigger sample in the Philadelphia region, just about how people have changed what they do, right? So where are they being active right now? How are they getting where they need to go? To just try and tell a little bit of a story around exactly that point, and maybe being able to find some of those folks who are starting to rely more on walking and biking to get to work because transit is different.
I'm going to take that segue to this is Jeanette Brugger from the city. I want to take that segue to encourage everyone to start thinking about ways to kind of push the envelope in terms of as soon as, in the near term, maybe things go a little bit back to normal. How do we take this momentum of people getting around more on bike and foot and not have it snap right back into how old things happen, right? So how do we stay together in our conversation and our advocacy? And we're really seeing the thought leaders saying that this is going to change how people commute for a very long time. It's going to be a downturn in transit. It's going to be an uptick in how people feel safe commuting, right? And I mean safe from germs, right? Safe from germs, but also safe from traffic. So safe from germs and safe from traffic means in your private car to a lot of people, right? So how do we encourage investment and focus to keep this momentum towards safe commuting and lifestyle going? I don't know. It's a really big question. I don't have the answer, but I need you folks to keep asking the questions, and I need you to continue to advocate for it. We need to think really big right now and not be put off by the big questions.
Thank you, Jeanette. I second that. I think there's a lot of potentiality here for taking advantage of a very terrible crisis in the sense of let's try to make the world a little bit better than we started out before it happened. So I think on that note, it is 3 o'clock, and that is the time that we were going to end our program. Thank you so much for joining us. Thank you for speaking up and commenting and asking questions and attending. And we will be in touch. Feel free to contact me or Anya with any thoughts you have. And we will be meeting again as a group in November, but hopefully we will see each other out on the trail, out on the circuit before then. So thanks so much, everyone. And thank you to Sean and Anya for putting this whole thing together. Really appreciate.
Thanks, everyone.
And thank you, Chris, for your PowerPoint and everyone else for working so hard to make this program possible. Oh, Lizzie had a hand raised. Is that Lizzie wanted to still say something?
Hey, yeah, sorry. I mean, I don't want to keep people longer than you want to be here, but just in the spirit of events that we're doing to get people out on the trails in a safe way, PEC is still planning on launching our Trail Off app, but we are deferring its launch until the fall and potentially linking up with the Philadelphia Fringe Festival to, because obviously theaters are also trying to think of ways to get people out and experiencing culture, but not in and experiencing culture. So this has ended up being an interesting partnership to solve multiple, issues around social distancing. So this is just to say that come September, there will still be a sort of marketing push around this new app and trying to get people out on the trails, but in a way that is inherently socially distant because you have your earphones in and you are trying not to let anybody bother you. That's all. Stay tuned for that.
Okay. Thanks, everyone. Bye-bye.
I'm going to unmute everybody. So if people want to say bye, say bye.
Say bye, next time.
Bye.
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 Thanks, Anya.
Thank you.
Get me on.
Sure. Glad you made it.
I'm trying to leave. Yes.
All right. Bye, everybody.
Bye, Sean.